What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another comic video. Today we're going to be talking about CGC Pre-Screen 9.8 service. I know a lot of people have already done videos on this, but this is going to be my take on it, my criteria, and just compare to see what everybody else's criteria is, right? So the main question is, why send it to the pre-screen process? Simply put, you don't want anything below a 9.8, right? Otherwise, you risk getting a lower and undesirable grade. The goal is to keep the value high because many sub 9.8s usually don't have much value for the newer books, unless it's like significant keys, right? So let's go over the details of the service. It's a 25 book minimum. The cost is whatever tier you're using. It's an $8 rejection fee, meaning they will only charge you the full tier fee if it meets your criteria, in this case a 9.8. Otherwise, it's $8. It takes a bit longer, 15 additional days from your tier. So let's look at my criteria. I have 5 main criteria for submitting pre-screen 9.8 books. So let's get to it. The first one is modern tier only, because most books are going to be newer that you're going to be submitting because you want to keep the cost down. The main thing here is you want to be cost effective. Everything wants to be lower. It's going to be also cheaper because obviously, if you're going to look at anything from a lower, before 1975, it's going to be more expensive, right? That just makes sense. And obviously, it's easier to get 9.8s if it's like modern tier stuff. More specifically, you want books from the 90s onward. But realistically, anything within the last few years or so, right? Because that's usually when people are usually taking care of their books. So stick with modern. All right. Number 2, low-level keys, such as Hulk number 16, the first appearance of Red She-Hulk. You want to submit first appearances of characters that are maybe not in the MCU or DCEU yet, or maybe just minor characters, villains, supporting characters, whatnot, because it could pay off later on if they turn into something later on. You want to submit books that are key events or maybe first issues that aren't on the radar, perhaps limited series of certain books. If maybe something gets too high, you want on to the next one. Or when it comes to the key events, maybe the limited series of said key event is what they're basing the movie or show off of, and then that can spike, right? So that's something you want to look for and submit because you probably have it. It's probably you got it cheap. So in the case of Hulk number 16, there's nothing on her, no rumors, spec, anything, but it is a first appearance of a major character, and anything below 9.8 usually it's not going to be that that valuable. It's probably going to cost you money to get it graded, but a book like this probably sells for about $130, so that's already probably like the minimum or lower end of what you want to submit a 9.8. So for example, like me, I didn't spend that much on this. I spent maybe $50 total with everything. So if it sells for $130, did all right. Number 3, low-level spec books. And these can also kind of cross over with the low-level keys, but specs are more on even the more minor characters, even lesser-known guys, because you want to sort of hedge your bets by only getting the highest grade for something that might not pan out, because at the very least you'll have a 9.8 in that grade, and there are 9.8 collectors out there. Example would be Moon Knight number 188, the first appearance of Sun King. This is a spec because although all signs point to Ethan Hawke being being Sun King in the Moon Knight show, we just don't know. So if it's not him, this will probably go down. It's already kind of like a fringe book to begin with, but if it is a 9.8, it's still at least a significant appearance of a character in the lore. Number 4, new books or from recent history. Example here would be the War of the Bounty Hunters. Obviously, this is a good one to submit because it is recent and there is a lot of hype around the Boba Fett show, so this could spike up at some point, right? And when I say newer books or recent history, I'm saying things that maybe you picked off from the shelf from the comic store the day it came out, so that way you're getting it at cover price to keep the cost down again, right? So most of these books will probably be at or around cover price, maybe a little bit more if it's a little bit older. but more or less you want something that's maybe significant. It's going to catch the get the coattails of whatever new hype that's coming out. So in this case, we're the Bounty Hunters with the Boba Fett show coming out in December. So this is a good one to submit, and it's recent. Only got it for cover price. And number 5, the fair market value or potential fair market value only nets you a profit in a 9.8 grade. An example would be Joker number 2. This fits the criteria of all the ones before. It's new. I got this off the rack. This is First Appearance of Vengeance, but this sells for around $100. So if you get a 9.6, it's probably not worth much. So you might as well submit this as a pre-screen so that if it does come back 9.8, you're good to go, right? Because let's break down the costs, right? The usual cost for a book when you submit through the process, CGC 9.8 process, it's around $35 to $40, give or take, right? Or more depending on what you paid for the book. If it's older or a little bit more significant. You will have to consider your pressing, your cleaning service, your shipping to and from CGC, and perhaps the $8 rejection fee of the other books. So that number just gets tacked on to the books that actually come back as 9.8. You also have to consider other fees like consignment fees, eBay fees, the rejection fee. So you want to sell it for a minimum of $100, but it should be closer to $125 so you can kind of offset those kind of fees. Now, if the book can sell for good value in a non-9.8, let's say a 9.6 or 9.4, here, let's show you real quick what a good example is. Would be Invincible Iron Man number 9, the First Appearance of Riri. So this, although you could submit this in a pre-screen because it fills all the criteria above, a 9.6 of this still around $300 because a 9.8 is about $700, almost $800 at this point, right? And it's only going to be going up. So if the book has a good value for a non-9.8, like I said, then you should only use the pre-screen if you absolutely don't want to get below a 9.8. Otherwise, it's better to use the regular service because it's faster and going to be more efficient that way. My rule of thumb is if a 9.8 is the FMV is $300 or more, then I should be okay with getting a 9.6, maybe a 9.4 if the value of the 9.8 is really high. Because normally a 9.6 for these modern books, it's probably going to be around half of what the 9.8 is. So if a 9.8 is $300, roughly 9.6 will be $150, maybe a little bit less. So you don't have to use the pre-screen because if you're selling for $150, it's still pretty good. So real quick, let's go over just the rest of the books that I will be submitting through the pre-screen. It's really just a couple books and it fits the criteria. It's really just 2. I have a lot. It's the Darkhold number 1, which is the first appearance of the Darkhold Redeemers, but also it's, has something to do with the Darkhold book itself. CGC 9.8 of this is probably around $200. So it's probably not worth it to get it a 9.6. Who knows? It might go up when the Scarlet Witch appears in the Multiverse of Madness, Doctor Strange movie, and that might take off. But right now, that's a good candidate to submit because also all these are around the $10 or less mark that I paid for, so it's good value. And the next one is Champions number 1. I have like probably 15 copies or so in here. This is another one because although it's a number 1 issue, it's new. There's no team really, but it could manifest. But there's a lot of things going for it, and the spec is behind this book. So right now it's probably going for about $200-$300. If it keeps going up, maybe I can just submit and get the 9.6s. So until then, I'm gonna submit these as a pre-screen 9.8, and hopefully, a lot of these come back as a 9.8. So, all right. Well, thanks for watching. I hope this helps a little for some of you. I'll be back when I get the pre-screen batch back in a few months. Please like, sub, comment. What's your criteria for pre-screen 9.8? We're getting close to 1,000 subs. I think we're at like a 984. So please consider subscribing. All right. Thanks for watching. I'll be back for more. Till next time, guys. See ya.